A small community mourns for a volunteer firefighter killed in the line of duty. Thousands feared dead after a mudslide buries a Philippines village. Fury over flag-burning kits to be sold to university students. And the Brownlow medalist's captaincy under review after a run-in with police.
Live from Melbourne, this is 7 News with Jennifer Kite.
Good evening. The small community of Barnawartha in the state's northeast is mourning the death of a volunteer firefighter. 41-year-old mother of three, Rebecca Helwig, was hit by a fire truck while fighting a grass blaze west of Wodonga.
As a volunteer firefighter, Rebecca Helwig was one of the most dedicated.
Beck was a wonderful person, showed a lot to the community. She got 3 great kids, which is going to be very hard on them.
Like so many times before, the 41-year-old yesterday answered a call for help. While battling to protect houses from a grass fire at Barnawartha, she fell under the wheels of a tanker, driven by a friend, witnessed by fellow firefighters and her husband Shane.
Me? I'd rather not talk about how I'm coping.
The close-knit community is rallying support for Shane and the couple's children, Gary, Blake and Beau, all members of the fire brigade.
Surprising? Well, I'm actually amazed at how well they are coping.
Locals met at the town's only pub where Rebecca was planning to celebrate son Gary's 18th next week. The tanker has been impounded and at the town hall, shocked firefighters heard from its driver.
He talked about his feelings to the group, which I think was a very brave thing to do. It saved him going through it 30 times every time someone spoke to him, so once was enough.
4 separate investigations are now underway and police won't rule out whether the fire was deliberately lit. It's the second time a CFA volunteer has died in the line of duty this year. The loss of a comrade who died helping others felt across the whole community.
Certainly been a very good time for everyone, I think.
Trent Evans, 7 News.
A remote village in the Philippines has been wiped out by a mudslide. Up to 3,000 people are feared dead on the island of Leyte. The Australian government has offered $1 million in aid.
She's a rare survivor from the horror, a little girl stripped bare and in shock. The deadly wall of mud came without warning, swallowing the village of Ginsagon. Witnesses say the mountain exploded, then all of a sudden collapsed. Of the 385 houses here, 3 were left standing. Lessons had just begun at the local primary school when the mud came. More than 250 students and teachers buried alive. Survivors were taken to safety in whatever rescuers could find. Relief and heartache for those who made it, knowing their families and neighbours are probably gone. The Philippines and United States have sent in the military.
Help is on the way. They will come from land, sea and air.
The disaster was triggered by weeks of heavy rains which soaked the mountainside, but some blame years of illegal logging. Blocked roads, washed out bridges and more rain are now making rescues difficult.
I don't know how many of them are still alive. I pray to God some of them are still alive.
15 years ago, 6,000 people died here in floods. Now another tragedy has sparked a massive international relief effort. Australia pledging $1 million in food, medicine and shelter. Cassandra Felix, 7 News.
2 Australians, including a Melbourne man, have been saved from execution in Vietnam. The federal government has successfully pleaded for clemency, giving hope the 2 Bali 9 ringleaders can also be saved from death row.
It was at last year's East Asia Summit that Prime Minister John Howard made his impassioned plea to spare the men's lives. 46-year-old Mai Kong Tan from Melbourne and Sydney resident Nguyen Van Chin were to face a Vietnamese firing squad for trying to smuggle more than 1 kilogram of heroin each to Australia.
Well, we're very pleased that the death sentences have been commuted. Prime Minister Howard has done absolutely the right thing and done it well in getting this decision out of the Vietnamese government.
The 2 men now face life terms in a Vietnamese prison. Hopes are high another Australian on death row will also be spared. The decision is being seen as a positive sign for the Bali Nine ringleaders.
Well, this has to be an encouraging sign for the Bali Nine. It's a sign that a country with a very tough death penalty system is prepared to grant clemency. It's also a sign that Australian diplomatic pressure can save lives.
A spokesman for Indonesia's Attorney General says Australian pleas are expected but will be ignored. Indonesia's ambassador says he's received letters and phone calls from the public backing the Bali Nine sentences, but none opposing them.
I believe that our representations are being closely considered, and if anyone is saying that they will be ignored, well, certainly that's not been my experience.
In Canberra, Julia Colajury, 7 News.
The families of Bali bombing victims are outraged at the early prison release of Abu Bakr Bashir, the spiritual leader convicted over the 2002 blasts. As we reported exclusively last night, he'll leave jail in June, sparking fears of more attacks against Australians.
Dave Spike Stewart just moved to Sydney to start afresh. Melbourne reminded him too much of his son Anthony, who was murdered on the dance floor of Paddy's Bar 3 years ago. But it seems Spike can't escape the nightmare, knowing Abu Bakr Bashir will soon be free.
We've got special forces. Get in there and get rid of the bastard.
This sort of rage is common from people connected to that night in Bali. The Coogee Dolphins lost 6 members. They too can't believe the latest news from Jakarta.
It's a kick in the guts. I know what the boys would like to do, but we can't take justice into our own hands.
Bashir's convicted of giving the okay to the Bali and Jakarta embassy bombings.
Abu Bakr Bashir is a mass murderer responsible for killing nearly 100 Australians and should spend the rest of his life rotting in jail.
There's not much distraught family and friends can do but to keep lobbying our government to again pressure the Indonesians not to let the alleged JI leader go. They say if he's out, more young Australians will be killed.
This mongrel will do it again as well. You know, there's no doubt about it.
Samantha Armitage, 7 News.
The RSL is disgusted by the release of a flag-burning kit which encourages young people to set fire to Australia's national symbol. The university students selling the kit say it's exercising free speech, but veterans want it banned.
It's an act of defiance that's never been easier, thanks to a group of young socialists. The Resistance organisation has developed flag-burning kits, complete with flag, matches and firelighter. Perfect, it says, for exercising free speech.
We think people are going to take to these kits very well because there's a lot of anger at the moment against the policies of the Australian government in Iraq, in Australia.
The group will target university students at Orientation Week across the country, selling kits for $5.
Burning a flag is ridiculous.
They should be more patriotic.
The matches supplied in these kits were made in Turkey, a country where thousands of Australians fought and died under the Australian flag at Gallipoli and where it flies proudly each Anzac Day. The RSL is outraged at what it calls senseless stupidity.
What are they trying to achieve?
It wants flag burning outlawed and a lesson for the young radicals.
I'd like to see them to stand up in front of some of our aged pioneers and our veterans that have given them this opportunity.
If they were actually thinking of running for justice, that's not what the Australian flag stands for.
The flag has become a symbol of nationalism, with a man jailed after burning one during the Cronulla riots. But not all Australians want the practice banned.
If that's their beliefs, then, fair enough. Would you buy one? Probably not.
Kate Osborne, 7 News.
Police are urging pedestrians to take extra